Hi, this is Adam Blaylock, and you're listening to Adam the Movie Guy. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show. Warning, the show you're about to listen to contains strong language and an unhinged host. Don't take me too serious. I'm doing a bit here, so stay the fuck off my back. Enjoy. If this shocks you, if this offends you, and you clicked on the wrong fucking podcast. Welcome, everyone. Today's show is a horror movie classic and the start of my favorite horror film franchise, Friday the 13th. Directed by Sean Cunningham and written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurtz. Now, before I ramble on and lose my shit, let me explain the format of my show. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the plot from start to finish, so there will be spoilers. I mean, if you haven't seen this horror movie classic that's been around before I was even a damn concept, that's your problem. Seriously, what the fuck are you doing with your life if you haven't seen this movie? Then again, you hit the play button on this half-ass operation, so I should just count my blessings. Then I will be discussing the characters and give my thoughts on them and anything interesting background-wise to them or the actors that played them. Next up, I'll talk about some interesting movie trivia background knowledge that's been covered to death and any asshole on IMDb can look up. I mean, I know chances are you probably don't know this, but if you're a huge Friday the 13th nutjob like me, you know this like it's the back of your fucking hand. Following that, I'll give you my own personal take on certain aspects of the movie and my own interpretations, whether it be plot lines, characters, or anything of the sort. Now, to end that segment and put a cherry on top, I guess you could say, I'm going to go on a pissed off rant about Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. Well, mostly Gene Siskel, who, admittingly, are both without question one of the greatest film critics to ever live, and I do have some respect and admiration for. I mean, have to. However, having said that, they said and did some truly hateful shit toward the original Friday the 13th in particular. So get ready for me to spit out some bile I've been building up for years that I need to get out of my system. Now, on to my favorite segment, and you'll know exactly why. I state who is the best character of the movie, followed by the hottest girl. And fuck it, for the sake of equality and to keep it diverse, I'll even do the hottest guy. I don't discriminate, I want to keep it fair. At last, I'll give my final overall thoughts and rating. Whew, Jesus Christ, that was a lot. I hope you're all still out there listening and didn't tune me out. God knows I checked out mentally halfway in there. Let's get started. The movie kicks off with a prologue set in 1958 on Camp Crystal Lake, where two counselors, Barry and Claudette, are giving each other fuck me eyes while singing a campfire classic, which, I mean, honestly, I can't say I blame Barry because Claudette is fine as hell. Meanwhile, an unseen figure is creeping around the cabins. The pair go off to screw upstairs until the unseen figure interrupts them, stabbing Barry, who had the funniest shit-eating grin on his face before he got gutted, and Claudette starts screaming her damn head off before she got butchered. Cut to black screen, and then opening credits bursting through an invisible glass window in bright, white, bold letters, Friday the 13th. Now that is how you open a movie. Anyway, fast forward to the then present of June 13th, 1979, and we're introduced to our main cast, beginning with Annie, who's hitchhiking her way to the camp. She gets a lift from diner patron Enos, who, funny enough, cops a feel of her ass helping her into his truck. Can't say I blame him there. But anyway, just before they get into the truck, they're stopped by and warned by town crazy Ralph, who's drunk as all fucking hell, and at 9 o'clock in the morning? He's also a surprisingly accurate prophet. So, quick tangent, this guy was so fucking good at playing Ralph in this movie. I'm convinced to this day he was actually slamming back a few beers before filming his scenes. Anyway, back on topic. Back in the truck with Annie and Enos, he tries to get her to quit to no avail, and he drops her off halfway. Anyway, as for the other main characters, we're introduced to them arriving at the camp to set up for the season. There's Jack, who honestly gets the best thing to do in this movie. He gets to smoke grass and fuck Marcy. Meanwhile, Marcy gets the honor of fucking Kevin Bacon, which honestly is one of the best things you could brag about. Next up, we got our original clown character, Ned, who spends his time being an asshat and crushing on Brenda, who I got a pretty interesting take on after I heard on another podcast first, but we'll get to that later on. Then there's Bill. He serves as a red herring as the killer, but honestly, he doesn't really do much, and I never really gave a shit about Bill. Next up, Alice, the clear final girl who has a fucking disgusting relationship with our final main camp character, Steve Christie. This fucking guy. He's the owner of the camp, and he's desperate to get it up and running again after a ridiculous amount of bad shit going down. Anyway, our motley crew of misfits starts setting up shop and getting the camp ready, while Steve fucks up for the longest goddamn lunch I ever seen in my life. No wonder why he can't get the damn camp started. He leaves a bunch of inexperienced, horny college kids alone, and he expects water to turn to goddamn wine. All the while a storm is forecasted for the night. Oh, good for them. So, our motley crew starts setting up the camp, now short a boss. Oh, that's great. Anyway, back to Annie. She gets a second lift by, wouldn't you know it, the killer, who proceeds to chase her into the woods and slit her throat. The effect was pretty damn good, and by today's standards, still holds up pretty well, I gotta say. Back at camp, the kids are taking some R&R time at the lake, all while the killer is watching them from a distance. I gotta say, Marcy is really rocking that blue bikini. Brenda, unfortunately, has a very Jesus, I can't fucking talk. It sounds like I have peanut butter in my damn mouth. Anyway, what I was trying to say is Brenda has a very unflattering white and red striped one piece that did not do her justice whatsoever. And this is a very cute actress, I gotta tell you. But, dear God, thank Christ this movie wasn't in 3D, because fucking Jack's dick in that blue fucking Speedo was threatening to come out of the screen and poke my eye out. But hey, good for him. Anyway, after Ned pretends to drown just to plant a kiss on Brenda, he definitely wouldn't be canceled today, they go back to camp and hijinks happen with a snake in Alice's cabin, followed immediately by a cop warning them off crazy Ralph, who's just spouting his drunken fortunes of doom off. I don't know how the fuck this guy has the amount of energy to do the amount of shit he does throughout the movie, but hey, my hat goes off to him. Anyway, the moment this asshole cop leaves, Ralph is revealed hiding in their pantry, telling all the kids that the camp is cursed and they're all gonna die, before taking off on his Wicked Witch of the West bike. Ooh, ominous. Anyway, the kids split up, starting with Ned being lured into a cabin by the killer and getting his. Speaking of getting his, Jack and Marcy end up taking refuge in one of the camps from the storm, which finally reared its ugly head around. So they start having sex, all the while back at the main camp, Alice, Bill, and Brenda start a game of strip Monopoly. Now, why in the fucking world why would you pick Monopoly as a game is beyond me. I mean, they didn't have cards for poker or even blackjack. Speaking of Jack, he finishes giving Marcy his bacon, haha. Marcy then heads out to the camp bathrooms, leaving Jack alone to smoke some post-sex grass, which gets interrupted by the killer shoving an arrow through his damn neck, killing him. I gotta say, as ways to go out, at least he got to get with Marcy. Totally worth it. And poor Marcy doesn't last much longer, getting an axe to face in the bathroom, separate from everybody else, somehow. Anyway, back to Alice, Bill, and Brenda. Their strip game comes to a premature end like we all do sometimes. You know who you are. I know some asshole in the comments is gonna type, "Are you sure you're not talking about yourself, Adam?" To which I say, I plead the fifth. Anyway, back on topic and back to the plot. Steve is finally getting off his lazy ass and starts heading back from his whole day fucking lunch break. He runs into car trouble all the while the storm is still raging on before getting a lift from Boss Hogg over here, Sergeant Tierney, one of the cops that we see in the movie, and we'll see him later a little bit at the tail end. Back to camp, Brenda is lured outside from her cabin, but what sounds like a child calling out for help, and she gets killed off screen at the archery range. Pretty damn scary, I gotta say. Alice and Bill start to worry about everyone and search the camp, but finding no one and the car won't start. Of fucking course it won't, because, horror movie logic. Back to Steve, he gets dropped off from the entrance and proceeds on foot, but runs into the killer who he recognizes, which is pretty interesting, and that'll play into a revelation later, and he ends up getting gutted as well. Back at the camp, Alice falls asleep, leaving Bill to fix the generator. Bill gets killed off screen, leaving Alice alone to be terrorized by the unseen killer and discovering the corpses of Bill and Brenda. After taking refuge in a camp... son of a bitch, cabin. Fuck it, I'm not editing that. She takes refuge in a cabin, and she sees a car approaching, and she runs outside for help. And who is it? Mrs. Voorhees. Dun dun dun. Did you guys like that? No? Okay. Anyway, she's a former camp cook from decades ago who worked for the Christies. After this very disturbing conversation, Mrs. Voorhees reveals herself to be the killer, explaining her motive being her son Jason, a bullied kid born with deformities, ended up drowning at Camp Crystal Lake back in '57, all because the counselors were too busy fucking each other to pay attention, which drove Mrs. Voorhees insane with grief and rage, vowing to never let Camp Crystal Lake ever open again. Seems logical. Can't say I really blame her that way. Anyway, so the chase is on with her attempting to kill Alice until a final fight on the beach ends with Alice cutting Mrs. Voorhees' head clean the fuck off with a machete. Pretty amazing effect, too. Anyway, Alice gets into a canoe and drifts deeper into the lake until she passes out. Come morning, and Alice wakes up with the police officers calling out to her from land, and everything looks all peaches and cream, and as soon as she lets her guard down, Jason springs out from the water, pulling her down into the depths. And this is all revealed to be a dream, and Alice is safely in the hospital, being the only survivor of the massacre. Now, the film ends with a very unsettling final line of Alice saying, "Jason was still there." And come the end credits, and that is the story of Friday the 13th. Whew, man, that's the end of this segment. Now, let's get on to the characters. God, I hope you guys haven't tuned me out yet. Alright, let's start off with Ralph Gorney as Crazy Ralph. This guy played the classic harbinger of doom that so many films copied after this. It seems like the guy just tells everyone from out of town that the place is cursed and to stay the hell away. Shockingly, he's actually stated to be married in a quick throwaway line, which makes me wonder what that relationship is like, and what the hell did Mrs. Ralph see in him? Also, that scene of Ralph hiding in the pantry scaring the shit out of Alice, what was the drunken logic behind that? Why hide in the pantry? How the fuck did he get there? How long was he in the damn thing? I'm asking the real questions here, come on. Anyway, this won't be the last we see of Ralph since he makes one future final appearance in the series that's next up on the list. Next, we got a 2-for-1 in Willie Adams Barry and Deborah Hayes Claudettes, the ill-fated lovers in the opening prologue of the movie. Honestly, not much to say for them aside from being Claudette is cute as fuck, and they both carry a tune, which, in my opinion, makes a good theme for the original movie, and, hell, even the series as a whole since it's an actual campfire song. Next up, we got Robbie Morgan's Annie, the classic psycho switch kill. Now, the movie sets you up to believe that she's going to be the main lead and probable final girl. She's so wholesome and sweet it damn near gave me diabetes. Anyway, she's the type of girl you could take home to meet the family and they end up liking her more than they like you. I mean, in my case, it's not that hard. Also, one interesting aspect I thought about her is the fact that she was hired to be the camp cook, and she ends up being the first killed in the present day by Mrs. Voorhees, who, funny enough, was a former cook for the camp back in '57 before Jason drowned, which I gotta say is an interesting choice to say the least. Next up, Mark Nelson's Ned, who, to be honest, I don't really have anything to write home about in regards to Ned. I mean, he's kind of a dick, with 3 examples being during the scene right when they go to the lake, or excuse me, before they go to the lake, Brenda is setting up the archery range targets, and this fucking moron shoots an arrow at the target she just set up inches away from hitting her and treats it like it's a fucking joke. Example 2, being the actual lake scene where he pretends to drown and Brenda starts giving him CPR and the asshole forces a kiss on her. Seriously, if I was either Bill or Jack, I'd pull his ass to the side and cuss him out like I was his damn father, and I'm being generous. Seriously, he deserved Brenda cleaning his fucking clock and I would have laughed. Damn, that's what they should have did. And finally, last example, him annoying the biker cop that shows up to warn them about Ralph in the next scene, and it almost ends up with him getting arrested. Ugh. In conclusion, Ned could go fucking kick rocks for all I care. Alright, next is Kevin Bacon's Jack, who honestly doesn't get much to do in terms of overall plot, but hey, honestly, who needs that, because he gets the first full sex scene in the series with the character Marcy. He also gets a very brutal kill by getting that arrow shoved through the back of his neck, which I'm going to touch on that later with another character. Next up, Janine Taylor's Marcy. Is it Taylor? Tyler? I'm going to say Taylor. Anyway, Janine Taylor's Marcy. I gotta say, she is a knockout in terms of being physically attractive. She got a very close relationship with Jack, and their chemistry is very believable. She also has this very creepy speech that she gives to Jack at the lake before their sex scene that describes a dream she had. I gotta say, it really gives you a sense of foreboding and dread. Now, imagine being in Jack's position and hearing that disturbing dream. Real question. Would you still be able to hook up with her? Now, for me, that's not a question at all, because, I mean, come on. Come on now. Look at her. You know where I stand on that. Next up, Harry Crosby's Bill. I honestly never gave a fuck about Bill. I mean, he's set up as a possible choice for the killer, but I never believed it for a second. He also has a borderline romantic relationship with Alice, since they're seen a lot together. Only other thing of note I can say about the character or actor is that he's Bing Crosby's kid. Yes, that Bing Crosby. Next up, Laurie Bartan. How the fuck do you say these people's names? Jesus Christ. Bartan. Laurie Bartan. Brenda. Fucking Brenda. Okay, she has a slight will they, won't they relationship with Ned. I don't know why, but whatever. More interesting is a different interpretation I heard of her on another podcast called Halloweenies, which I highly recommend. You guys got to check that out. Great podcast. Anyway, the view on her on that show is that she's secretly bisexual and possibly has a crush on Alice. The Halloweenies crew podcast elaborated by pointing out that she cockblocks Bill when he was playing the guitar and was impressing Alice, and it was her that came up with the idea of playing strip Monopoly. Fucking Monopoly, but whatever. And she made a point to express her disappointment that the game was ending right when Alice was about to take her shirt off. You know what? That would be a pretty interesting love triangle with Brenda and Bill both competing somewhat for Alice's affection. And honestly, guys, I love this interpretation of Brenda. Now, hear me out, guys. Hear me out. If I were to remake this movie today, I would add this aspect to it and make it slightly more explicit. A few of examples I can think of at the top of my head. The scene when Bill kills the snake for Alice in the OG movie Have Alice be very appreciative of Bill, while Brenda looks the tiniest bit jealous. Another moment they could spice up a bit would be the lake scene. In the OG movie, Alice is laying down tanning on the dock next to Bill, being damn near on top of each other. What I would add to that would be that Brenda offers to put suntan lotion on Alice, with her accepting, and Brenda applying it in a borderline sensual way, while Bill and Brenda keep shooting each other side glances at each other for a few seconds. And finally, the scene where Brenda cockblocks Bill playing the guitar and starts the strip Monopoly game. Have you be taken a little further with them all down to their underwear, and right when Alice is about to remove her bra, have the game end at that point and have both Brenda and Bill both express a deeper, more pronounced disappointment than the original. And before Brenda leaves, maybe she feels a little bold and gives Alice a kiss on the cheek just long enough to raise both Alice and Bill's eyebrows and have her give Bill a borderline cocky smile. Maybe Bill gives her a dirty look. Maybe Brenda rubs one out thinking of Alice when she's in bed. Fuck me, I need to write movies. Oh my god. Anyway, before I need to be put in horny timeout, let's move on to the next character. Next up is Peter Brewer. I don't fucking care anymore. Steve Christie. Ugh, this fucking guy. Now, okay. His motivation for trying to get the camp up and running is understandable and somewhat sympathetic. It got passed down to him from his father, who died broke and frustrated after all the bad luck and tragedy the camp has suffered. A drowning, 2 murders, poisoned fucking water somehow. How the fuck do you poison a whole lake and it lasts the whole summer? Anyway, Steve just wants to prove to the town and to himself that the camp isn't cursed and he could succeed where his father couldn't. All that I can actually get behind. But what I can't believe is the fact that he somehow managed to seduce and hook up with our final girl, Alice, right before the events of the movie. And it's not even an age gap thing. It's he looks like a living stereotype of a 1970s sexual predator to the point where it was distracting. Especially in that first scene with Alice when he starts caressing her cheek and shoulder while she gives him a somewhat what the fuck look. Oh my god, when I watch this movie, every single time that scene plays out, Steve activates my fight or flight response, and I could feel my asshole tightening so hard as if he's about to come out that screen, bend me over, and give me the Fleece Johnson treatment. Ugh. Anyway, next up is Adrienne King's Alice, who, while I do like as a final girl and think she's somewhat underrated, she kind of gets overshadowed by the other final girls, not just in other horror films, but for this franchise in particular. However, she does deserve some respect for not just being the first final girl of the series, but she has the honor of being the one to kill Mrs. Voorhees, and honestly, that's all she really needs. Next up, and finally, we're reaching the end here, the killer queen herself, Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees. What more could be said for this iconic performance? Well, I'm gonna try at least a little bit. The scene when she introduces herself to Alice? Great. The part when she starts revealing her true intentions? Creepy as fuck. When she loses her shit and attacks Alice? Perfection. When she channels Jason and starts speaking in his goddamn voice? Disturbing as hell. Betsy Palmer gave a truly unforgettable performance as Mrs. Voorhees, that her one time as the villain in the series is enough to put her in the horror movie villain Hall of Fame. Boom. Period. Unfucking debatable. And last but not least, Ari Lemon, whatever the fuck, as Jason. Now you're probably wondering why I'm including him on the major cast list, since he was basically just a plot device / motivation for the killer. And you're technically not wrong. However, his presence is definitely felt throughout this movie to the point when you get to the stormy night part of the movie and that chilling scene with Brenda, hearing a child cry out for help in the storm, was in my opinion the scariest scene in the movie. Oh, and that dream sequence at the end that will last in film history forever as one of the most shocking moments to ever be put on the screen. Well, that's all I have to say about the characters. Let's get into the next segment covering some background movie trivia and an angry, pissed off rant I got about Siskel and Ebert. Alright, I'm gonna make this trivia section short and sweet in the form of Did You Know? Mostly because, like I said earlier, you could look up this shit at IMDb or just watch any Friday the 13th documentary. And I could feel my blood boiling about Siskel and Ebert's bullshit comments and stunts they pulled in regards to this movie. Alright, let's get on with it. Starting with the trivia. Did you know that Jason's name was originally going to be Josh and he wasn't going to have any deformities? It was makeup effects master Tom Savini's idea on that last one. No, really. Did you know that the killer was going to be missing a finger to factor in on the big reveal? I mean, that probably would have been kind of obvious, but hey, I don't write this shit. Did you know that the Camp Crystal Lake is located in New Jersey both in universe and in real life? No shit. It was actually filmed at a real-life camp called Camp Nobisco, and they're still open to this day. They give tours to the fans on weekends. It's actually pretty amazing. I hope to go someday. And last but not least, did you know that the iconic ch-ch-ch, ma-ma-ma is actually meaning kill, 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 ma. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but some bullshit about him putting in an echolocation machine or something like that, and he played around with it, and that's a sound that you hear in the movie. Well, all the movies, really. What the hell? I'll do one last Did You Know. Here we go. Did you know that Betsy Palmer hated the script and she called it a piece of shit? She herself said she only did this so she could buy a new car. And, you know, she was actually a really, really good trooper on set. She was very respectful. She didn't act uppity. She's actually a fucking sweetheart. A foul-mouthed sweetheart, but still a sweetheart. And over the years, she greatly warmed up to the movie, doing conventions and signing autographs since it became her most well-loved and known role. Rest in peace, Betsy. Oh boy, here we go. Alright. Now that we got that out the way, let's get into my beef with Siskel and Ebert when it comes to the series, and especially this movie in particular. Both Ebert and Siskel bashed this movie in each installment -1 to high hell, which is surprising which one he actually complimented, specifically Ebert, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But anyway, they said some bullshit things like it sends bad messages, it hates women, and that both the creators and fans who enjoy the movies are horrible people and they should be ashamed of themselves. Okay, first off, if both of you fucking clowns actually watched the movies without your holier-than-thou attitude and realized they had some of the strongest female characters put on film and stopped trying to preach to us all the while we were sucking off other horror films in the past that weren't that far off from the Friday movies, Halloween. Second off, who the fuck are you to judge the people on what they enjoy or not, as well as the creators of film like this? Who the fuck are you, man? I mean, okay, I get it. It's both your opinions and you're entitled to it just like anybody else is to theirs. And I could forgive those opinions out of respect even if I think they're wrong and they're full of shit. However, there's two things I can't forgive. One, this piece of shit, spiteful bastard, Gene Siskel, wrote in his review in the Chicago Tribune way back in 1980 about the movie and gave away its ending to stop people from seeing it and hurting its box office performance. How fucking miserable could you be to do that shit? If I was Sean Cunningham and that was my movie who he's trying to ruin and fuck with, it would take every goddamn soul in my body to stop me from wringing his goddamn neck if I saw him in person and force-feeding him his fucking heart. Number two, and the cherry on top, this fucking snake gave out the address of both Paramount Studios and Betsy Palmer's hometown to encourage people to send hate mail. And if anything happened to Betsy, ooh, motherfucker, it would have been partially on your head. You don't like a movie, fine, but to talk all that shit and to go out of your way to possibly put people's lives in danger, you're fucking scum. Seriously, just goddamn you, fuck you, and just leave us horror movie fans and Friday the 13th fans to our fucking enjoyment, you pencil neck motherfucker. And if anybody doesn't like what I had to say, thank you, fuck you, bye. Okay. I'm sorry about that. That got more heated than I was expecting. I need to take a break and calm down. God damn. Apologize, everyone, for some of that last segment. I need to get that out of my system. But let's move on and start this next segment of Best Character in both The Hottest Guy and Girl. Now, Best Character of the movie is without a doubt Mrs. Voorhees, who in her short time on screen steals the show. Also, she kills Steve and Ned, which is a plus for me. Next, Hottest Girl. And that's going to be without a doubt Marcy. When she busts out that blue bikini on the lake and walks into frame wearing that tight shirt with no bra on, I guarantee you all eyes on her in those fucking scenes. Next is the Hottest Guy, which, I mean, come on, Jack. I mean, he takes it in his sleep on the grounds he's played by Kevin Bacon. Easy money. I want to give two honorable mentions here. One is Brenda, who throughout the movie wasn't really appealing to me. Her day clothes weren't really flattering at all, and her one-piece swimsuit she wore fucking sure as hell wasn't flattering at all. But the damnedest thing happened when she was wearing a robe, and then she removes it, and she's in her long, white, old-school nightgown, and that's when it clicked for me that she was hot. Maybe it's just because I prefer the old-fashioned sweet girl with a wild streak type. And it's just funny to me that I'm more attracted to her wearing the damn nightgown and robe that covers everything. Meanwhile, her day clothes and one-piece suit cover less and just didn't work for me at all. Anyway, final honorable mention goes to Betsy Palmer. Now hear me out. Say what you will, but she was kind of giving off crazy MILF energy that after a few drinks I had while I was watching, I was starting to dig. In conclusion, she can get it too. By the way, if you look up photos of her in the 1950s, she was stunning. Whew. Anyway, let's move on to the final segment of Last Thoughts and the ranking. Okay, final thoughts. This movie to me stands out among all others in the series, being less a slasher and more of a crude poor man's Agatha Christie movie. But hey, I mean that in the best possible way, since even the poor man's Agatha Christie is still Agatha Christie. Just not as good. For my ranking, I'm going to do the 5-star system, although in this case it's going to be decapitated heads, referencing, well, you know, Mrs. Voorhees getting her head chopped off. I'm going to give this movie 3.5 decapitated heads out of 5. It's a great solid start to the franchise and is unique among its sequels. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show and stay tuned in for the next full-length episode covering Friday the 13th Part 2. This took a while to do, and I want to thank you all for being patient and supportive to me with all the feedback I've been getting. I want to give shout-outs to my family and friends who I couldn't dream of not having in my life, and I want to give shout-outs to other fellow podcast show who inspired me to finally make my own, such as Girls, Guts, and Jalo, We Hate Movies, The Horror Show, Halloweenies, Banana Laser, and last and definitely not least, The Skeleton Crew, whose show in particular gave me so much joy and helped get me through a very tough period in my life when my mom got sick and well past her death. Thank you, Alex. All right, let's see how long I can keep this ship from sinking. Good night, everyone, and tune in next time.